more real, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So to begin, can you just share your name and what led you to Zen practice and what brought you to Japan to study at Anteji?
My name is Muho. I've been living in Japan for more than 30 years now. I first got into contact with zazen when I was 16 and I lived at a boarding school, and one of the teachers there was into meditation, and he asked me and the other pupils if they were interested in meditation. And it was the time when in Germany, where I'm originally from, an Indian guru who was called Bhagwan at the time in Germany. He was extremely popular, but I was kind of suspicious because I'd heard on TV, in the newspapers, that he was riding in expensive Rolls-Royce cars. So meditation for me kind of had this dubious ring. And I said, no, thank you, I'm not going to attend. And 2 or 3 weeks later, the teacher again asked me, why don't you try? And when he came the second time, I was even more suspicious. It sounded like a sect to me. And when I said no for the second time, he asked me, well, have you ever tried? And I said, no, and I have no intention to try. Then he asked me, well, if you never try, how can you say that you're not interested? You have to try at least once. Thus, I decided to come that night and then tell him that I wasn't interested. But as a result of that one time, I'm sitting here today. So for some time, for some reason, I got into Zen meditation. Probably the first thing was that I discovered I have a body. Everybody knows that you have a body, but if you had asked me when I was 16, where are you, who are you, I would have pointed to my head, the brain that's thinking in here, that's me. Or maybe I'm something outside that's connected to the brain, whatever. I never thought that everything that comes below my neck was really a part of myself. So in school I was always sitting like this, or laid back, and maybe it's the same in America. German teachers are not so strict when it comes to posture. In Japan they a little bit more strict, but in Germany maybe sometimes the teacher will tell you, hey, maybe you should sit a little bit more straight. But then I would say, why would you care about my posture as long as I listen and have good results in the tests? And what surprised me about Zen is actually everything felt different when I just sat straight for 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. And of course I knew that to live I need to breathe, but I never felt my breath. 16 years of my life I'd never felt my breath. And for the first time I felt myself breathing in, breathing out, and was a big discovery. How come that something that was so close had completely escaped my attention? Or that bird that probably had sung from morning the whole day, for the first time I hear the bird that's singing outside the window. And that is what made me come back. And after 1 year the teacher left the boarding school, and he asked me if I would like to, how do you say, continue to lead this zazen class. There were no other teachers interested, so I was in charge of the class. And then I started to read books by D.T. Suzuki and other Buddhist books that they had in the library. And when I heard about the Buddha leaving the palace when he was young, I was reminded of myself when I was 7. I lost my mother. She died of cancer when she was 37. And because I had lost my mother so early, I asked myself already in elementary school, if we all have to die, why would we live in the first place? What's the meaning of making homework, for example? Why do I have to do homework? And when I asked my father, he says, well, if you don't do your homework, you don't get good grades. But then, Dad, why do I need to get good grades? So to get into middle school, to get into high school, to get into university. Why do I have to get into university to get a good job and earn money? But when I watch my father go to work every morning, I don't get the feeling that he enjoys his work. So I ask him, why do you go to work? Why do you earn money? Well, to raise you, I need money. So that doesn't answer my question, why do we live in the first place? And when I asked my father, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of your life? He told me basically, well, maybe you should ask the teachers in school. And the teachers in school, they would kind of laugh and say, you're a little philosopher, but we don't teach that in elementary school. Wait until you get to middle school, until you get to high school, and then we will study difficult topics like that. But of course, even in middle school and high school, nobody would teach you about the meaning of life. And when I heard the story about the Buddha leaving the palace because he thought he discovered that life is basically unsatisfactory, I felt as if I'd met, well, a soulmate for the first time. Finally somebody who feels like myself. What's the meaning of the whole thing? Even if I could become the king of the country, what's the meaning of it all? I have to die, my wife will die, my children will die. So when I read these books about Buddhism and Zen, I knew this is I want to invest my life in. I had no other things that I wanted to become in the future. So I decided to study Japanese in university, and after that I came to Japan in 1990, and pretty soon I heard about Antaiji, the monastery where I then became a monk, and for 8 years I trained with my teacher. After 8 years, when I was 33, I went to Osaka, where I'm living now, and for 6 months I lived in a tent in the park. And my idea was that I would start as a Zen group in the middle of the city, because there's lots of Buddhist temples in Japan, but very few where you can regularly practice. Most of the temples, they care for the parish, which means that they do funeral service, memorial services. But there's not so much meditation practice going on in the average temple. So even in a city like Osaka, it's hard to find a group that meets regularly to practice Zen. So about 22 years ago, my idea was to start such a group in Osaka, but 6 months after that, my teacher died. So I had to return to Antaiji, which is a monastery that lives self-sufficiently deep in the mountains. And I had met a young woman at the time in Osaka, and I proposed to her, and she became my wife. And today we live in Osaka, but for 20 years we lived together in Antaiji. I was the head teacher there. And 5 years ago, I finally found a successor. One of my female students is now the present abbess. So I asked her if she could imagine to become the new head of Antaiji, and she said, yes, if you think I can do it. So the present abbess of Antaiji is a female Japanese nun, and I'm living again here in Osaka with my family.
Thank you. So, in your understanding, who was the Buddha and what did he teach?
Who was the Buddha and what did he teach? I could imagine that every Buddhist has their own idea of who the Buddha was, what he really taught, what really Buddhism is all about. And I think it's okay that everybody has their own idea. In my case, when I think about the Buddha and about his kind of original question, I think about myself when I was 7 years old. So I kind of see the Buddha through my own eyes, and I think that's okay. So for me, the Buddha is somebody who questioned the meaning of his life. He felt he was suffering, and that's something that is also speaking to me. That was the case for myself. Life is, well, not satisfactory. You're never completely satisfied. Why is that? Because you always want it different than it is. You always want the things that you can't have, and the things that you have are exactly those that you don't want to have. That goes for people, that goes for things, that goes for everything in your life. It's never exactly the way you want it. And then the traditional Buddhist view would be, well, the reason why it is that way is because you have attachment, but there's the Eightfold Path to deal with that attachment, to reduce the attachment. The more you reduce the attachment, the more you get liberated. From my perspective, I would say the way to liberation is to, first of all, how do you say, really get into contact with the suffering, accept the suffering, rather than say, I suffer because I'm attached, so now I need to reduce my attachment. I would say, really get absorbed by this suffering, and the moment you get absorbed in the suffering, you often realize, actually it's not so bad. Life is not the way I thought it's supposed to be, but it doesn't have to be the way it's supposed to be. Or for example, one example would be pain. When you sit for long hours, often you feel pain. Pain is the, how do you say, the way suffering, or duka as it's called in India, unsatisfactoriness manifests as pain during sitting. How can you be liberated from pain? By just being in pain without doing anything. So you even try to stop, to reduce the pain or get out of the pain. And then there are all those moments where you realize, okay, there's pain, but actually there's no problem with that. You could say in a way, there's pain, but there's nobody who's feeling the pain, or it doesn't hurt anymore. There's the pain, but it doesn't hurt anymore. And I think the same is true about all of suffering. So you just accept suffering at face value, but then you realize there's no problem with it. Until then, you thought, well, I have a problem with my suffering, I need to do something about it. And in my view, when the Buddha, after 6 years of ascetic practice, just sat down under the Bodhi tree and sat, he did exactly that. He stopped trying to deal with the suffering. He even didn't try to reduce the suffering anymore, but he sat with the suffering and he saw the morning star and realized, oh, that's it. That's it. And to make the thing more, well, customer friendly in a way, he invented maybe the Eightfold Path, or maybe it was even his disciple who invented this, well, custom friendly 8 steps to liberation. And then you have the 12-fold chain of mutual dependent origination, and you have, I don't know, 53 steps to bodhisattvahood. But for me, it's basically about this, just sitting in the state of unsatisfactoriness. And in that moment, actually, nothing is missing anymore. You realize nothing was missing from the start. So that for me is Buddhism, but I'm not sure if that's what actually the Buddha taught. But to be honest, I don't care so much.
Great answer. The next question I'm curious about is, what is Zen, and how is it distinct from other forms of Buddhism? Mm-hmm. And in that, can you touch on the difference between Rinzai and Soto as well?
What is Zen? Well, there's 2 possible answers. One is, Zen is one school of Buddhism. It developed in China about 1,500 years ago. Usually they say that it was the Indian monk Bodhidharma who brought Zen from India, and when he met the Chinese emperor, and probably it's a made-up story, but for the identity of Zen Buddhists, it's an important story. Bodhidharma was supposed to have had an interview with the Chinese emperor, and the Chinese emperor had built lots of temples. He had supported monks and nuns. He had the Indian sutras translated into the Chinese language, and he asked Bodhidharma, first of all, what virtues have I accumulated by all that I've done for Buddhism? And Bodhidharma said no virtues at all. And the emperor was surprised and asked Bodhidharma, well, what is the holiest thing, the one holy truth of Buddhism? And Bodhidharma says, it's open and wide, there's nothing holy. And the emperor lastly asked Bodhidharma, who are you? Who are you to talk to me in that way? Bodhidharma said, I have no idea. And then he went to Shaolin to sit for 9 years in a cave until his first student came. And at first Bodhidharma wouldn't even look at him. Only after the student chopped off his arm to demonstrate his motivation, his willingness to study with Bodhidharma, he turned around and the student asked, my mind can't find peace. Please give peace to my mind. And Bodhidharma said, well then, show me your mind, bring that mind to me. And the student says, I can't find it. And Bodhidharma says, there, your mind already has peace. That's the story about how Zen started in China. And Bodhidharma is also credited with saying that we don't rely on the sutra. That's the difference between Zen and all the other Buddhist schools. They all rely on this sutra or another sutra because there's lots of scriptures in Buddhism. And few Buddhists study all of these scriptures. There's too much. So they concentrate on one. For example, the Lotus Sutra, or a sutra that concentrates on the Buddha Amitabha, whatever. And Zen says basically forget the sutras. Follow the example of the Buddha. That means sit, sit, sit. And of course, it's not only about the sitting, but being aware in all of what you do during the 24 hours of the day. So Zen is the school in Buddhism that says, well, if you don't become Buddha, you won't find the Buddha anywhere. You don't find him in the scriptures. You don't find him in the temple halls. It's not about the, how do you say, the statues. You have to manifest the Buddha in daily life. And that's, well, the historical development, but you could say that actually, well, Zen isn't part of Buddhism at all, because you don't have to believe in Buddhism. You don't have to believe in the teachings to do that. You could do it as a Christian, you could do it as a non-religious person. So you could say, and some people do that, that Zen is kind of the core of Buddhism, but it's not part of Buddhism. You could also, well, take it out of there, so to say. Remove the religious taste of Buddhism altogether. In China, Zen developed into 5 different schools, and Rinzai and Soto are the 2 that exist until today in Japan. Soto is my school, Rinzai is the other school. Rinzai is famous for using koans. So you don't just meditate, but the teacher gives you a question. One famous question is, 2 hands clap. What's the sound of 1 hand clapping? And well, obviously 1 hand alone doesn't make a sound, but you have to somehow produce an answer. You have to give an answer to that question. And then there's hundreds of these questions. So in a way, the teacher drives you into a corner, or he tries to, how do you say, get you into a state where all of your logical thinking doesn't get you anywhere. And in Soto, you don't use these questions. It's all about sitting, sitting, sitting. And in the beginning, at least that was the case for myself, you think, well, you meditate to become a Buddha in the future, to get enlightened, become a Buddha in the future. But what they tell you in Soto is sitting is good for nothing. You don't even get enlightened. You will never become a Buddha. And then the question, of course, is, well, why do we sit then? So in a way, you could say that in Soto, the practice of zazen itself is the core. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And while the official textbook answer would be, well, because sitting itself is an expression of Buddhahood. When you just sit without the idea of gaining anything from that, you are already Buddha. But when this textbook answer becomes an intellectual understanding, it's also a trap. So the idea of Soto is to get, well, behind this intellectual understanding that sitting itself is an expression of enlightenment, and, well, to just sit when you sit, to just clean when you clean, to just eat when you eat. That's how I would describe Soto Zen.
So the Buddha centered his whole path around suffering, as you spoke to. Can you share a little bit more about what suffering is, like what duka is, and what the cause of suffering is? Also with like how Zen or Buddhism helps people to be free of that cause, or to be free of their suffering.
So the Buddha famously claimed that life is suffering, or to be more precise, the word he used is duka, which means, well, unsatisfactoriness. I heard that one explanation of the term is that it makes a wheel where the axis is broken, or it's, how do you say, out of center. So the wheel is turning, but it's not turning exactly right. So if you're sitting on a car and it's always making this hubble, so it could be more perfect, but it isn't. And the Buddha first names 4 examples of this dukkha, unsatisfactory. First is birth into this world. And a lot of people might, well, be wondering, why should a birth into this world be something we shouldn't be satisfied about? And maybe some people are so happy about their lives that they don't feel that it might be something unsatisfactory. But a lot of people, and that's also true for myself, you ask yourself, why? Why did my parents have this stupid idea to have me? If I hadn't been born into this world, I didn't choose it. If I hadn't been born, so much less suffering. So for the Buddha, it starts there. You never chose to be born into this world, and you didn't choose to be born as this person, you didn't choose to be born in this century, you didn't choose to be born into the family you were born. That's where unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness starts. You could have been born as a better person, more intelligent, more handsome, in a more wealthy family, whatever. Or you could have been born never at all, and for some of us that sounds like the best option, whatever. Next point is getting older. Most of us would rather stay young, but you get older, and then number 3, you get sick, and number 4, you die. Even those of us who rather prefer never to have been born, when it comes to dying, would say, wait a minute, wait a minute, I don't want to die. So those are the 4 basic forms. You didn't choose to be born, you don't want to get older, you don't want to get sick, you don't want to die, but all of these will come. Well, maybe you die before you ever get sick, but usually we get sick. And then there are 4 other quite easy to understand forms of dukkha. One is you're never with the persons that you want to be around. For example, romantic love would be one example. You never can get the one that you would want to have. Your love interest. Other boys or other girls always get the better partners. You always feel that you are less popular. And the one that you get is never the one that you really wanted. And today we have Tinder, we have all these opportunities to get the perfect choice. So sometimes you get exactly the person that you wanted. You chose that one and you get it. And the funny thing is, even then, dukkha works. You thought you got the one that you wanted, and 2 weeks later, 2 months later, maybe 2 years later, you realize it wasn't the one after all. So that's a very easy to understand form of dukkha. You never get the one that you want, and the one that you get, the moment you get it, you realize it's not the one that I wanted. And then that's number 7 and 8. That also goes for all the other things. You never get exactly what you wanted from life. Today you could order everything you want from Amazon, and maybe you are, how do you say, excited for a day or two until the parcel arrives, and then you open it. No, it doesn't make me happy. You get exactly what you ordered, and still there's this realization, no, that's not what I wanted after all. And number 8 would be, well, exactly this. So you never get what you want, and what you want is never what you wanted. That's dukkha. That's dukkha. It's basically, I think, what the Rolling Stones sang about when they said, well, I can't get satisfaction. Although in the 21st century we can get basically everything compared to the time of the Buddha. Probably each one of us has a, how do you say, more luxurious life than the Buddha had as a prince. We have smartphones. In Japan we have toilets that automatically clean our behinds if you just press a button. You press a button and a machine cooks rice for you. You have a cleaning robot that cleans the house for you. We have everything, and still we are not satisfied. That's dukkha. How can you get released from that? How can you get liberated from dukkha? The short answer is to just accept, well, that's the way it is. I'm not satisfied 100%. I never get exactly what I wanted. So what? So what? Is there a problem? No, there's no problem with that. It only becomes a problem if you make it into one. If you think, but I'm supposed to get this, I'm supposed to be happy. But as soon as you let go of this idea, I'm supposed to be happy, you realize there's nothing missing. That not only goes for happiness, but also for terms like enlightenment or nirvana. At the beginning of the Buddhist path, you think, I have also Buddha nature, supposedly. So after 3, 5, 10 years, I should be enlightened. But as long as you practice with that attitude, you never get enlightened. You never get to nirvana. Because you have this idea, now I'm samsara, but samsara sucks. There must be a way out of here. And for me, nirvana means the realization, actually samsara is not so bad. Nothing is missing here. The only thing that's kind of in the way, the only thing that's making me suffer is this idea, but I have a right to be in nirvana. My life should be easier than that. Soon as you let go of this idea, there's no problem. There's no problem. So that's what for me is liberation from dukkha. To just accept dukkha and realize it's not so bad. It's not so bad. And interestingly, I mean, people think that after Buddha got enlightened at 36, so he attained nirvana at that point of time, people imagine that he didn't have any suffering anymore. But when you read the sutras, you hear the Buddha complain about pain in his back, or he died from, how do you say, food poisoning. He had pain at that time. He was suffering from diarrhea at the end of his life. Interestingly, even after his enlightenment, he also, from time to time, he had conversations with Mara. One English translation would be the devil. And for me, that's kind of, the devil is something inside of the Buddha. It's not something outside. So having a conversation with the devil means that the Buddha still had doubts, or at least that's how I see the Buddha. That's not maybe the traditional point of view, but when the Buddha had a conversation with the devil, he was dealing with his own doubts. That means that even the Buddha was still facing dukkha after enlightenment. But that, for me, there's no contradiction there. To accept that as that's the normal state. There's still this black or dark part in myself. There's suffering in my life, but I accept it. I talk with the Mara, I talk with this dark side in myself. I accept it, I face it. So that for me is liberation from suffering.
Can you touch on the nature of craving? I know in like historical Buddhist texts they talk about the cause of suffering being craving or trishna, thirst, and it's certainly something I've struggled with or noticed other people struggle with, is like these cravings. You think that you want something and then you go after it and it turns out to be unsatisfactory, and even knowing that, there's still this persistent craving there that, according to the Buddha, is like the root of the suffering. So can you speak on the nature of that craving and how Buddhism works with that?
It's often said that the reason for suffering is our craving. And there's different forms of craving. For example, biological, we feel hunger, thirst. There's also sexual craving. We could, at least in theory, live without enacting on our sexual desires. But with thirst and hunger, if we don't somehow react to that, we die. So Buddhism doesn't teach that you should not react to any craving. When you're thirsty, you drink. When you're hungry, you eat. Although a lot of Buddhists refrain from eating meat, so they eat only vegetarian diet. In my view, what's more problematic than, well, these very basic forms of craving is what I call the game. What I call the game is what starts when you're 3 or 4 years old and you learn to say I. And you learn that tomorrow is another day. Around that age, you start to compare yourself. For example, if you have siblings, with your older brother, your younger sister, and you always have the feeling that, well, your older brother gets more attention from your parents. He always gets new toys, and you only get the old toys from your brother. Or your younger sister can always sit on the lap of your father. You always feel like you're losing, but you want more attention. Or in school, you calculate which one am I in the class, number 5, number 6, or am I at the bottom? When you get into your teens, you want to be popular with the other sex, or maybe with the same sex, but you're never the most popular. That's what I call the game. You try to win, you try to gain points, and often you suffer, or how do you say, you sacrifice today for tomorrow, day after tomorrow. To be better today, tomorrow, I make, how do you say, an effort today. But playing this game, what we're losing, or what we're kind of, losing is the reality of just right now. You're always comparing yourself with the others, and you lose sight of what's beyond comparison, which is, well, Rinzai, the Chinese monk Rinzai, called it the true man without form. So we're all unique in the way that nobody is exactly like me. But the true man without form isn't unique in that way that you can't, how do you say, that he's different from all others. But it's more that all of us, how do you say, if I wouldn't be here right now, the whole universe wouldn't exist. And that's something that's true for each one of us. If you would not exist, nothing would exist. But usually we don't think on that level. We think about who has more money, who's more handsome, who's taller, and so on. So we live on this level where comparison is possible, and craving basically is on that level. And the reason why craving is a problem is because it takes us away from the level where no comparison is possible, because there's only this. What a lot of people call the here and now. We always, how do you say, locate ourselves somewhere on the map where comparison is possible, or on the timeline. I want to be here in 5 years, in 10 years. I want my life to be better. But thus, we're never here, which is the only moment. And you can't compare it. You can't compare this moment. So for me, craving is, living on the map or on the timeline, and always trying to collect more points in a game that sooner or later gonna end anyway. And the moment you realize the game is gonna be over in 30 years, maybe in 50 years, whatever, craving becomes meaningless. But usually we, how do you say, blend that out. We don't think about the end of the game.
So thinking of the end of the game, recognizing the end of the game, kind of makes you appreciate where you're at right now, not trying to win the game so much.
Yes, exactly.
Can you share about, you touched on it a little bit. You said when we're young, we start to form this I.
Yes.
And in Buddhism, there's a lot of talk about the self, or more so the no self. Can you share a bit about what the ego or self is, and in contrast, what our Buddha nature is, or how those two play together? You know, most people certainly believe they have a self.
What's the Buddha? Once more. What's the ego and what's Buddha nature? Buddhism says that basically this world which we live in is a world that we constructed, and probably modern psychology would agree that none of the stuff that I see around me exists exactly the way I see it. It's an idea I have of the things, an idea that I need several years to form. For example, cars, trains, trees, grass, the sky. But I see it, well, the way I grasp it. So we construct the world. We tell ourselves a story about the world, what's happening outside there, who my father is, who my mother is, who I am. And ego is basically the story that I tell myself about, well, this person on the stage that I constructed, or kind of the script that I write for that person. And the reason that the ego can become a big problem is that everybody thinks that this person that I identify with is, well, the most important one. The whole movie, the whole story is about this person. But because we all identify with different persons, and also we construct different stories, well, we clash with each other. Nobody except ourselves thinks that this person is the most important. Nobody appreciates us the way we would wish to be appreciated. That's ego. That's what I would say is ego. Kind of the idea, the presumption that this person that I call myself is the most important, that the whole story or the whole movie, whatever you want to call it, is about this person. So what is Buddha nature? Traditionally in Buddhism, Buddha nature means the potential of each living being to become a Buddha at one point. In Zen, you don't understand it that way. In Zen, you would say, right now your reality, the reality you're living right now, is Buddha nature already. This moment when I speak, Buddha nature is speaking. This moment when you watch and listen, Buddha nature is watching and listening. So, using the metaphor of the story or the movie, Buddha nature would be the screen where the movie takes place. Buddha nature is what becomes before you construct the world, but what needs to be there for a world to appear in the first place. So, in the Heart Sutra, which is a very basic text in Zen, there's this phrase which says, there's no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no consciousness, and there are no things that you can see, nothing to hear, nothing to smell, nothing to taste, nothing to feel, nothing to be conscious of. The whole reality that you constructed, it doesn't really exist. Buddha nature, in my view, is what becomes before that. So you can say there's no eyes, no ears, no nose, and so forth, but you could also say, actually, those eyes and ears and nose and tongue, those are the eyes and ears and nose and tongue of Buddha nature. Right here in this moment, Buddha nature is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. The difficulty with Buddha nature is when you explain it like this, you make Buddha nature already into something. So Buddha nature becomes part of the story, becomes part of the map. So in Zen, one of the famous koans is about the Buddha nature of a dog. A monk asks his teacher, does even a dog have Buddha nature? And the textbook answer would be, yes, of course. All living beings have Buddha nature, even dogs and cats have Buddha nature. But the Chinese master, his answer is or Chinese Wu means, well, no or nothing. There's no Buddha nature. And well, the point of the koan is, how can that be? All of the sutras teach that all of us have Buddha nature. How can this Chinese master say that there's no Buddha nature? And the point of the koan is, of course, something that you shouldn't explain, but if I explain it just a little, Mu means let go of this theoretical concept that you have of the Buddha nature and become one with, well, Mu. And Mu in this case would be the ungraspable. Start trying to grasp Buddha nature, but rather get in touch with that which is watching and seeing and smelling and tasting, feeling, being conscious in this moment. What is it? What is it? What is it?
Great. All right. So you touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to ask, what is enlightenment or nirvana? And it's seen as like the, you know, the thing to achieve, or like when you reach nirvana, then you have freedom, then you have peace. So, you know, what characterizes that? How can someone experience that peace or that freedom or enlightenment? Even if I know in Zen it's a little about like letting go of trying to get to that destination, but there's still this concept of of there being a state of freedom or nirvana.
What is enlightenment? What is nirvana? Maybe it's easier to explain what illusion and samsara is. Illusion is exactly this idea that I'm in illusion now, but I want to get enlightened at one point in the future. I'm in samsara now, but there's nirvana on the other side of the river. I want to get to the other shore. That's what makes us unsatisfied, which makes us suffer. I'm never exactly in the place of time, at the spot in this world where I want to be. Never with the same, exactly with the partner that I want to be with. Never have the job that I would like to have. I never live the life that I want to live. And enlightenment or nirvana means to let go of this idea, even of the idea of enlightenment. So, if you are really enlightened, you don't have the idea, now I'm enlightened, because there's nothing to show off. For example, Dogen, the founder of my school, when he came back from China, he said, I come back with empty hands, I have nothing to show. Not even Buddha Dharma, not even enlightenment. Nothing. But that would be enlightenment. That there's not even enlightenment anymore. Nirvana would be to realize, actually, well, there's nothing but samsara, but there's nothing missing. It's not samsara anymore. There's only this shore. There never was the other shore. I'm already there where I wanted to be. I'm already in the place. And that's the famous here and now. I was always there, but my mind was always on the map. My mind was always yesterday, today, tomorrow, you and me, him, her, and always comparing. Your mind was never at this one point or at this one place, which is the only place to be, but that's where you never are. That's, again, illusion, and enlightenment would be to return to that point. And when you return to that point, words like nirvana and enlightenment lose their meaning. That's why in Zen we say there's nothing to gain. There's nothing to gain.
That's great. Can you share about a little about the Eightfold Path, and particularly what it means to have right view?
Okay, so in Buddhism we have 4 noble truths, and number 4 is the Eightfold Path. And any Buddhist should know the 8, but I'm not quite sure if I have them here. I'll try. Number 1 was, I think, right view. Number 2, right thinking. And it's interesting that they come in the beginning, because basically that's the end. That's enlightenment wisdom. When you see the world like the Buddha, you think like a Buddha. Right view, right thinking. Basically you see things as they really are, not through your glasses, through the glasses of delusion, but things as they are. Number 3 was right speech. So basically, well, you don't lie. You tell it as it is. Which is a little bit difficult because from the Zen perspective, speaking already misses the point. Whatever you say is not right speech anymore. So in Zen, we're always a little bit flexible. Whatever I say misses the point, but I have to say something. Because silence would also miss the point. But, well, you try to avoid lying. You try to present yourself in a better light than you are. You try to stop collecting points with the way you speak. You try to be authentic. Number 3 would be right action. Don't do what you know you shouldn't do. Don't harm others. And again, why do we harm others? Because we think this person is more important than the other. They are preventing me from collecting the points that I have a right to collect. So I try to steal the points from the others. So right action would be also, well, to keep to the rules of the game. Point number 5 would be right livelihood. Live in a way that allows you to act right. So right action is kind of more a moment-to-moment thing, while right livelihood is kind of more long stretch. Get a job that allows you to also study the Dharma, practice the Dharma. Number 5 is right effort. Which is, well, probably for all of us a problem from time to time, that we know we should do more, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to get up early in the morning. We don't want to sacrifice our time or energy for others, and right effort would be to, well, still do it after all. Number 6 and 7 are basically about the practice of meditation. Number 6 was right mindfulness. Number 7 could be translated as right concentration or contemplation. Mindfulness is more about, well, clarity, having a clear mind, and the last one is more about the depth of going really deep into, well, samadhi, you could also say. And I think you were asking about right view. Was that number 1? So once more, that would be maybe the other 7 or other 6, like right speech down to right contemplation, help you to get free of the game. And when you take a break from the game, if you're not a slave to the game anymore, that allows you to see things as they are, rather than just things as items in the game. You don't see things as tools for you to collect points anymore, but you see these things just for themselves, so to speak. That, in my view, would be a right view, taking off the glasses of delusion.
What role does meditation have in Buddhism and in Zen? And how does one practice it, and why is it beneficial?
What's the role of meditation or zazen? Well, the official answer in my school is it's good for nothing. Zazen is good for nothing, but that's exactly why we do it. To get us out of this mind, I want this, I want that. I want to improve myself. I want to get enlightened. I want to get to nirvana. zazen in short means to take a break from that game. Stop collecting points, even enlightenment points, even dharma points. You quit doing that. And in theory, you don't even need to do sitting meditation. You could just live your whole life from morning to night without worrying about the points that you collect in the game. But with most things we do, there's a result. For example, to work. When you work, you get a result from that. You get something from studying, even cleaning up your room. As a result, your room is cleaner. So it's very easy to get attached to the results. While with sitting, ideally, there's nothing after 1 hour that you gain. Maybe in the beginning you feel something is changing. I'm more relaxed now. I'm more quiet. I become a more stable person. It also helps me to be more harmonious with the people around me. And all of that is true, and also it's important to a certain degree. But after a couple of years, do you get to a point where you maybe have the feeling, well, even if I sit, it doesn't change me so much anymore. But exactly that's the point, to continue then to just do it, to just return to this point that's good for nothing, where you can't get any points. You don't gain any points, but that's the, how do you say, the precious thing about this practice. You don't gain anything, and that's okay. When you sit for half an hour where you don't have to achieve anything, not even satori, not even samadhi, not even a quiet mind. It's even okay if thoughts are drifting through your mind. You don't worry about that. You allow that to happen. So that's for me the meaning of meditation. A time where you don't have to achieve anything.
Would you say in that there's peace or freedom in that?
Yeah. That's ultimate peace. That's ultimate peace.
What role does letting go have in Buddhism or in peace and freedom in general? I know Buddhism talks a lot about letting go of attachment, and many people have attachments, but many people, if you were to tell them that, they say, well, how can I let go? Or I don't want to let go of this thing. I love my precious attachments. So can you speak on why that's so important?
Letting go. You could say that Zen is all about letting go. If I had to express Zen in one word, you could say it's letting go. Completely letting go of everything. And probably a lot of people are not interested in letting go. It's rather that I want more. And what I have already, I want to keep. Or I want to get rid of this and rather have that. People don't want to just open the grip of their hands and let go. I'm afraid you can't really, how do you say, force people to understand that letting go is a good thing. It's just that we all suffer, and in the beginning we might think, I suffer because I don't have enough already. I need more to reduce my suffering. At one point you get to the realization it's exactly the other way around. I don't suffer because I don't have enough already, but rather I suffer because I want more and more. It's exactly this mindset that makes me suffer. What gets me out of that mindset? Well, letting go. I don't need more. I rather need less material stuff and less mental stuff. So how do you do that? For those who practice the Dharma, that can be a very difficult problem. So you understand that letting go is a good thing. You say, I want to let go. I want to let go. When you meditate for 30 minutes, you try to not think about enlightenment, nirvana, but rather you want to let go of all of that. I want to let go of everything, especially things like, I don't know, I want to buy this, I want to have sex, whatever. You want to let go of all of that, but you can't. You're still thinking about what you want to eat for dinner, you're still thinking about your girlfriend, you're still thinking about this enlightenment that you hope to have at some point in the future. How can you possibly let go? And my answer to that is, as long as you try to let go, it's never gonna happen. Letting go is nothing that you do. It's not that you sit and then you tell yourself, now I let go, and then it's happening. It's not gonna happen. Forget about letting go. Opening the hands, Uchiyama Roshi, which is the teacher of my teacher's teacher in Antaishi, he has this expression, opening the hands of thought. And that's his expression for zazen. You open the hands of thought, and when you open the hands, you're ready to accept what's happening right now. So letting go doesn't mean to push things away, but it means to just allow reality to manifest in this moment. And this can be, for example, craving, desires. Allow that to happen without touching it. So don't tell yourself, I need to let go. Rather, allow reality to unfold without getting involved in it. And the reason why in Zen we sometimes practice very intensively, there are the so-called sesshin in Japanese, where you practice for 5, maybe even 7 days and meditate from morning to night, is that usually around the 3rd day or so, you get to a spot where pain, frustration, all of that, doubts about the meaning of what you're doing, get so strong that you have only 2 options. Either you pack your stuff and leave, or you keep sitting on the cushion even though you're so desperate that sometimes it feels as, well, it costs your life. The pain, and sitting there silently for 1 week without, well, communicating with the people around you, it can make you so desperate that you seriously think, I'm not gonna survive this. But then if you keep sitting, you have no other choice than letting go. I'm gonna sit here even if it costs my life. And that's not something that you can, how you say, do by telling it to do. Zen practice is designed in a way that helps you to get you to that point, and then you just have to allow yourself to keep sitting. I call that you die on the cushion. Of course you don't physically die, but in a way that's what's happening. Death on the cushion, physiologically. And that's what I would call letting go. And in that moment you accept everything. So again, that kind of letting go, even of your life, means to accept your life. And for me, until then, it felt like I didn't ask my parents to have me. Life sucks, life sucks, life sucks. I was convinced life sucked. And the moment I let it go and said, oh, even if I die, I'm gonna sit here, I realized, but I'm still alive. What was I complaining about all the time? Out of a sudden, life felt like a present, like a miracle. I'm still here. The pain is still there. I'm still not exactly sure why I'm sitting here, but I am sitting here this moment, and it's wonderful. Absolute, total letting go is also total acceptance. And in that moment, there's no duka anymore, no suffering anymore. You wonder, what was I complaining about all the time? What was I complaining about my whole life? But in my experience, you have to pass. In the Bible, there's this. I think Jesus talks about the ear of a needle, the eye of a needle. You have to pass through a needle, and it feels like this. A very, very small hole. It's impossible to pass through, but when you pass through, the world looks different. But to pass through, you have to, let go of this ego idea. Let go of this story that you tell about yourself, and I'm this person, I need to take care of this person needs to be happy, this person is not supposed to be in pain, this person. If you accept that this person might die even today, okay, then be it, and then you're free from the story.
I'd like to touch on, like, in Zen there's a huge emphasis of being mindful in everything that you do. Can you share a little about how to apply Zen to daily life, what mindfulness is in that sense, and like how can people take from this, if they're watching it, how can they start to practice that in everything they do outside of just the traditional sitting?
One important element of Buddhism and Zen is mindfulness. It's also the seventh part of the Eightfold Path, right mindfulness. Being in the moment, being in everything that you do. So when you clean your room, you just clean it like that, but you're really in there, in the cleaning. When you sit, you're not just sitting in a kind of drowsy state, but you're completely mindful, aware. When you sit at work, you're working mindfully. That means you're doing exactly what you do. Your mind is not somewhere else. A lot of people have heard about mindfulness, they understand it's important, but in my view, there are also traps of mindfulness that some practitioners seem to be not aware of. What's the trap of mindfulness? For example, when you eat, you understand, I need to be mindful when you eat, so you close your eyes, you chew and chew and chew, you count how many pieces of carrots are in the soup, and that moment you think you're mindful, but your mind is somewhere else. You completely lost track of what's happening around you. You're so mindful when you clean and you brush with the broom that you fall over your own feet. So sometimes it's also important to let go of this idea, I need to be really mindful, and just do it. So I often told my students, when you clean the dishes, don't do it mindfully, but clean the dishes. And the idea behind that is, if people try to clean the dishes mindfully, they do it with this idea that I have to do it somehow extra mindful. In that moment, you're not really cleaning them anymore. You're kind of observing yourself while you clean the dishes. So there's an extra you, kind of the observer somewhere up there. Just clean the dishes. Of course, when I say just clean the dishes, it doesn't mean that you should be distracted and be doing something else while you clean the dishes. Clean them 100%, but even forget about this idea, I need to be mindful, I need to be mindful. Just do it. Just do whatever you do.
Is the goal of that to be one with what you're doing? Because there's typically this sense of separateness, me here and the dishes there, and I am washing the dishes outside myself, but through that, just doing it, there's a more of a oneness with what you're doing.
You could say that doing things mindfully means to be one with what you do. But then, of course, some people might ask, how do I know when I'm one? And the answer is you don't know. You know when you're two. But if you're one and then you ask yourself, is this now, this state of oneness, then you're already out of there. So it would be another trap to think, I need to become one, I need to become one. You will never become one as long as you try. Forget about even this idea of becoming one or being one. Just do it. Just do it. And the moment you forget about all the stuff, you are one without knowing. Same about being a Buddha. The moment you become a Buddha, you don't know anything about Buddha. You've completely forgotten about Buddhahood or Buddha nature, enlightenment, nirvana, all of that disappears. The same with being one. Of course, it's important to be one, but forget about being one as well.
That's great.
I didn't notice that. I wasn't aware you were using the microphone of the camera.
No worries. It'll still pick it up well, and I don't mind if there's a little bit, but if I can help it, in a sense like that. So my goal with this documentary is to present Buddhism in a way that can help people understand how to find happiness and peace and freedom from suffering. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, just for you personally, or like speaking to the viewer, what advice would you give someone to be free of their suffering, to experience peace? If there's one real essence or piece of advice that you would offer, what would that be?
Well, there are many layers of suffering, many degrees of suffering, and probably all of us, we want to have less suffering. We want to get free of it. But in my view, in my experience, of course, for a limited time you can, take a break from suffering. But if you want to be really free from suffering, that means to first of all embrace that reality that you're suffering from. So it's not a movement away from suffering. You go to a meditation center and then for 30 minutes, for an hour or so, you can forget all of your suffering. Maybe even if that's the case, you will get back to your life, to the reality that you're suffering from. So in Zen, it's more the opposite approach. Get closer to what you're suffering from. Get so close that there's no separation anymore. And if there's no separation anymore, there's not me suffering from that anymore, but it's only, for example, in the cane, there's only pain. There's only pain. But when the separation disappears, there's nobody suffering from the pain. And I think that's true for many forms of suffering, that rather than kind of try to get out of there, we need to get closer to it. And of course, not all forms of suffering we need to accept as they are. Sometimes we also need to work with them, try to change ourselves or try to change things in our environment. But also for those changes to occur, we need to get closer to it. There's something in our family that's causing us to suffer, rather than try to kind of get away from it, get closer to it. What is it that causes the problem? At work, whatever. Get closer to the root of the suffering. Allow yourself to, well, be swallowed by suffering. I often use the metaphor of a meadow and sheep, and originally I used this metaphor to explain of what's happening during meditation. So meditation, we often think, I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna have a peaceful mind. But what's happening, to the surprise of many beginners, is you hear meh, 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 meh from here and there. There's all these sheeps making a lot of noise. There's black ones, white ones. And the first thing you think is, my role is to play the shepherd and silence the sheep. And I need to separate the white ones and the black ones. But you're not successful. The more you try to do that, the more chaos the sheep cause. One thing you can do is, for a while, become the sky and just watch what's happening on the meadow. You don't touch the sheep, you don't try to control them, you just allow them to be. And usually they get much more peaceful. And I would say that you should not stop even there, because at that point where you are the sky, there's still this distance. You're watching from the distance. Allow yourself to be the meadow. That means you allow the sheep to trample on you, to feed on you, to take a dump on you. You allow all of that. Please, I'm here for you. So that's true for thoughts and emotions that come up during zazen, but that's also true for all the other things in our life. For example, the things that we suffer from, the sheep that make them suffer. Rather than try to control them and rather to take a distance from them, become the meadow for them. And at one point, these sheep, they are fed enough. They are full, and then they take a nap. But for that to happen, you need to become the meadow for the sheep.
Thank you.